What got you here won't get you there. You know it, I know it, and every executive and founder eventually hits the point where the old playbook stops working. And for years, the easy button was person branding, post online, share your story, build an audience. And it worked because attention was cheap and algorithm prioritized and rewarded consistency, and simply showing up made you already stand out. Fast forward, we are in 2025 and the landscape has completely shifted because everyone is posting and the algorithms, they just try to force all the content down your throat. And with that, because it's not necessarily the best content, let's just put it that way, we are tuning out from the noise. And of course, that makes it a lot harder to win because we are still following the old rules. However, we're playing a completely different game. Followers don't equal influence, at least not anymore. And likes don't equal leverage. And the people who are winning now are those with proof, with systemized and packaged IP, and of course with authority assets that compound over time. That's why in this episode, I'm breaking down the new operating system, which we call the authority capital. It's how you prepare for succession, for exit, and also for board influence in a way that's sustainable, scalable, and strategically positioned. In a nutshell, authority capital is about turning your expertise into scalable trust assets, from frameworks to language to credibility markers that go beyond visibility and give you equity in your reputation. We are heading toward the end of 2025, which is unbelievable by itself, but also a good time to check in where things are at to have a strong finish to the year. And while we all know that the only constant in life and business is change, it feels like I've lived through 3 lifetimes in the last 9 months. Sometimes that's because you've outgrown things, and other times it's because the world around you has shifted. And for me, it's a bit of both. When I moved to the Gold Coast at the end of 2024, a lot of people thought it was just the spur of the moment thing that we did. But it wasn't. Don, my partner, and I wanted to move closer to the beach for years. But because his kids went to a school that required us to live in a catchment area, we basically couldn't. And for that alone, Brisbane was absolutely fantastic, and I loved it for the 13 years that I lived there until I didn't anymore. We built our little bubble, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love bubbles, but eventually it became too small and too close. At first, it felt like the perfect convenience. The shops were 300 meters away, the office just over a kilometer, the gym just around the corner. But over time, it also felt like a trap. There was no commute, there was no change of scenery. We met the same people, we had the same conversations. And now, also with the Olympic construction noise buzzing in the background pretty much 24/7, I felt like I was switched on 24/7 and there was no calming down, no thinking about what's next and so forth. And I've always prided myself to be able to think around the corner and realize already today what's happening tomorrow. And for the last couple of years, I was like, I don't know. Hence, I wanted to make a change of scenery. Now, as you can hear from my accent, I'm also not from Australia originally. I came from Austria. And honestly, the move from Europe to Australia completely changed my life. And it sounds very dramatic, I know. However, I've been exposed to a completely different way of living that I wouldn't have otherwise if I would have stayed in Austria. Simply because nobody thinks differently. It's a very small place, beautiful for holidays, especially over Christmas. Don and I are going back to Austria every second year, and this year we are going again for the months, and we're celebrating Christmas in the beautiful Alps and so forth. However, to live there, it's a different kettle of fish. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because your environment matters. It shapes you. It can help you grow or it can hold you back. For me, I experienced both. When I came to Australia, I all of a sudden grew. And to be honest, I don't think I could have had the career and the progression that I've had in Australia if I would still be in Austria. And let's not talk about the people and the culture. And I can say it because I'm still Austrian at heart, but they're always grumpy and cranky. If you're an Austrian, drop me a comment. I know that you know, and you know that I know. With leadership, it works exactly the same way. What got you started and got you to a certain level often becomes the very thing that also keeps you stuck there. At some point, the question changes from how do I prove myself to what's next? And let's not forget to address the elephant in the room of thoughts. The can I do it again question. I've been there, and probably you have been there too. Now, here's why it matters more than ever. Over the next 5 years, we will see the biggest leadership handover in history. because baby boomers are leaving the economy. They are handing over their businesses, slash they want to hand over their businesses, but often realize it's not as valuable as they thought. They want to hand over their businesses to the next generation, and they don't necessarily want to have it. But that's a completely different topic, which I will go into more detail at another time, because this has been the space and place that I've been playing in a lot more over the last year or so. However, why I want to say that is that this is a major shift. Then we also have, for the first time in history this year, 6 generations in the workforce. And now AI, of course, is changing not only how we work, but also how we build trust. And here's the truth. The strategies that got you here won't get you there because the game has changed. Visibility as a starter used to be scarce. Only official media channels had the opportunity to create content and broadcast news. Now, every single person who's got access to the internet can create content. And if they want to say that the earth is flat, they can do it. What can you do about it? Nothing. And this is why the whole economy, the whole way how we work, the way how we build trust, the way how we do business is changing. So sticking to the old playbook that used to work in the pre-2020s, of course, they don't work anymore in 2025 and beyond. However, what really makes the difference is trust, and not just trust in the moment, but trust that scales. Trust that's built into systems, into frameworks and ideas people can rely on even when you are not in a room. And this is where magic happens. So the question is, how do you prepare for what's next? And this is something I've been researching a lot, especially for my second book idea. And honestly, don't ask how it's going because it's not going anywhere at the moment. Let's just put it that way. I've gone through a lot of thoughts, from do people even read books anymore to by the time it's published, probably all the strategies and all the case studies that I'm using are outdated. But also, I'm not an organizational psychologist. Like, who am I to write this? If you know, you know. Goes to show we all have our thoughts and concerns, and that's okay. But here's the thing, I haven't given up on it. I'm just refining where it leads. And in the meantime, I'm sharing some of the key principles and the case studies here and see how it resonates with you. And one of those ideas is what I call the influence multiplier map. It's a working title, but who knows, maybe it sticks. Now, the core concept is that there are 3 layers of trust that we can build. Phase 1 is reputational capital. This is where most leaders stop. It's your personal brand, it's visibility, it's being consistent, and it matters, but it becomes a ceiling eventually. Phase number 2 is authority capital. This is where you take what you know and package it into frameworks and systems. You stop relying on charisma and start building assets that compound. And then phase number 3 is what we call relevance capital. This is where influence extends beyond your role. You are trusted at the board table, in industry conversations, and for your decisions, not just for your delivery. So we go from reputation to authority to relevance. That's the shift. Now let's talk about the authority capital pyramid. If you've been following me for a hot second, you have come across my 3 C's framework, which I've been teaching for nearly a decade. Again, freaking wild. The 3 C's in my impact framework stands for clarify, communicate, and commercialize. That's the process. It's the foundation of personal branding. It gets your ideas out of your head and into something people can actually see, trust, and buy into. Now, the base layer is clarify. This is the foundation. If you are not clear, you cannot be trusted. It starts with your brand promise, meaning what is it that you want to be known for? We then turn it into your value proposition, meaning how can your expertise benefit others? And lastly, it's your differentiators. Why are you the obvious choice, not just another option? Now, the outcome of this first step, which I always call is the unsexy work, is that your positioning is crystal clear. We then build everything on top of this. The middle layer is communication. Once you're clear what you stand for, what you can do that benefits others, and how you do it differently to everyone else, you need to now make it visible, memorable, and of course, repeatable. We start with the visual identity, which is the look and feel of your clear position, and also the verbal identity, the language, the tone and voice, the sound bites that build recognition. And of course, we also build your content IP system, the phrases that you use, the sound bites that you want to be known for, and of course, stories that stick. Now, the outcome of this second phase is that you are known and consistently recognized online and offline. I'll tell you a weird story, but it is 100% true, and it has happened multiple times in different kind of environments. However, it was a couple of years ago, we went to a 30th birthday, and it was at wineries. So I'm in winery mood, and the singer of the band comes over and said, "Hey, are you Petra Sink?" And I kid you not, that was the case. And literally everyone of the group from the 30th birthday party that we were with, they looked at me as like, who are you? Because I had not actually met them before. And this random person, as it seems, because he was the singer of the band, comes over to me and asked me if I was Petra Singh. And I just said, yep. I thought I'm in big troubles or whatsoever. I didn't quite know what's going on because it was in the middle of nowhere at wineries. So who would know me there? Well, clearly somebody who had connected with me on LinkedIn over years and said, I've seen your content everywhere. But this is a strong connection between online and offline recognition, that people actually realize who you are rather than not being able to put the dots together. And to be honest, over the last few weeks, I've met so many people on the Gold Coast. Obviously, I checked out the LinkedIn profile first, and then we meet, and it's a completely different person to what I was expecting. And let's just say it breaches trust quicker than we can say the word trust. Because when you've got an expectation of something or someone, and it completely is the opposite or not even close to what you were actually thinking that you would get, it can be a little bit disappointing. Let's just leave it there. Now, let's move on to the last layer of the personal branding pyramid, which is commercialization. Because clarity and communication only matter if they lead to leverage and results. This is where your signature framework comes in. Your ideas, your experience, expertise, and your education packaged into a repeatable method. Then we connect it with your signature story, which is the narrative that connects emotionally and builds belief. And last but not least, we also build your signature system, basically the delivery model that scales results beyond you. Now, the outcome of this layer, which is obviously the one everyone is most interested in, is that your authority is now sustainable and monetizable because you've taken out what you know and what you are able to do for others into frameworks, systems, and also into repeatable models that others can now use whether you are in the room or not. Now, when you do that well, you create the 3 pillars of trust, which is then the foundation to becoming the trusted authority in your industry. Because your personal brand foundations, they don't usually change or not as significantly anyway, because it's all about getting clear about your values, about your strengths, about your weaknesses, your signature stories, and they may change depending on what you want to be known for and what you want to become the trusted authority for. But going through this exercise, and we usually do that in decades, so what happened between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, 30 and 40, and so forth, we can then extract those stories and connect it with the lesson that you want to teach based on what you want to be known for. So yes, you can switch between being known for that to being known for that. However, if you do that every 6 months or so, of course, people are getting confused. However, nowadays, where AI literally changes everything, we also need to be more adaptable, which means that we have to think, how can I leverage my skills and my strengths in a way that is relevant today and tomorrow, because there are different expectations. And then what kind of story, what kind of case studies, what kind of examples can we wrap around our expertise that makes us unique? Because remember, we make our decisions based on emotions, and stories create emotions in us. And then we justify it with logic. Yes, they've got the education. Yes, they've got the experience. Yes, they've got the blue tick. But this is the second step. And this is why stories are so important in how you show up and how you build your brand, in how you build your reputation. And this is the real shift. We are going from having a strong reputation to holding that equity in your reputation, because reputation might get you recognized, but authority capital makes you strategically relevant tomorrow. It's what turns your reputation into tangible assets that live beyond you delivering the outcome through frameworks, systems, and stories that scale when you are not in a room. Now, you maybe wonder why this pivot. And for those OGs who have been following me literally since I've been talking about personal branding in 2015, shout out to you peeps, I want to be clear. I've never been about just personal branding in the influencer sense, because my audience has always been professionals. I've never taught how to go viral or how to make a duck face. I still don't even know how to properly make it. From the start, my process has always been about assets, framework, systems, and stories people can rely on, simply because my clients have always come to me in order to get a more senior role, in order to land a board director position, and or to start their own business. And clearly, simply looking great and being able to do a duck face and being an influencer doesn't necessarily float the boat for this level of professionals. Now, what has changed isn't the foundation. The good thing is that this is a strategy. This doesn't change necessarily, but the focus and the tactics that certainly has evolved. And especially looking ahead, leaders are facing transitions from exits to succession to scaling teams and of course also preparing for growth. So the work has been refined. We apply the processes not just for visibility, but to create what we call authority ecosystems, where assets, networks, and opportunities all compound. Because here's what crystallized more than ever. Frameworks are the shortcut to results. That's what turns expertise into a robust brand that holds up under pressure, scales beyond the individual, and also creates opportunities for the future. It's not about chasing attention for the sake of it. It's about building authority capital, meaning equity in your reputation, by systemizing what makes you valuable and connecting it to the ecosystems that sustain it. Now, I give you a few examples to make it more practical and less abstract. We recently worked with an accountancy practice and they've grown rapidly. And they continue to expect the growth to happen over the next few years. However, the growth literally happens because of the founder. He's built the reputation, he's built the connections, and he brings all the clients in through either direct connections or through referrals. And that's all great. However, he wants to retire. And even his son, who is also an accountant, doesn't want to take over the practice. Now, that puts him obviously in a bit of a pickle because there are no systems, there are no frameworks, there are no processes that actually show how he does what he is doing, that we can teach somebody else how he's doing it, that the practice can sustain beyond him. And this is literally what we've been implementing. Initially, he just came to us to place an accountant, which is nice. And obviously, if you've been following me for a while, you may know that I also run an executive search practice. So we do recruitment. We tried to find an accountant and we did. However, that was not the answer because there's a lot more problems in the background. Now, what we did was we codified everything that he did and that he knows into frameworks, built his online presence because he was literally not there, made the real point of difference visible to not only future staff, but of course also to future clients. And all of a sudden, it has gone from just being a practice, one of many, to an investable business asset. Another example, an exec that I've recently worked with, she has transitioned from executive corporate roles into entrepreneurship. And again, when somebody makes a transition into entrepreneurship, a lot of leaders think that simply having 20, 30, 40 years of experience will tick all the boxes to also being able to run a business. Especially when it comes to a service-based business, being able to systemize and package your IP into a delivery model and a system that you can then scale is literally what makes you money. Because if you have to build a new system, a new framework, a new keynote for every single client that you work with, you invest more time in researching, in preparing, in the admin that you will ever get paid for. Hence, I'm such a big bully when it comes to developing your one signature framework that can then go into multiple smaller frameworks that are then turned into 2 to 3 signature keynotes and so forth. So there is a system to the madness, and depending on who you speak to, what kind of event you're attending, or what kind of service you want to push, you already have the assets ready to go and don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And this is exactly what turns trust into a scalable asset. So you see, it's different people, different situations, but the same outcome. Authority capital creates leverage, relevance, and of course also choice. So if you are a founder or an executive and you are preparing for what's next, whether that's succession, exit, or board influence, the answer isn't doing more of what you've done. It's about building the systems, the frameworks, and the assets that multiply your influence. That's exactly the work that I do with my clients. And we deliver results fast. And when I say fast, it is fast. We work together for a full day or 2 half days if we conduct this intensive online. And within a week, you have all the initial authority assets that you then need to approve. And from week 2, you can literally implement them and get results from that. Usually in brain strategy sessions, you wait for like 7, 8, 12 weeks to get the first draft until you get some assets. 3, 4 months later, you still didn't get any results. Whereas when we are 3, 4 months in, we already know what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to tweak. And honestly, this economy values speed. So the quicker you can be out, test your message, test your position, test your package, the quicker you get feedback, the quicker you can pivot or tweak depending on the feedback that you get. And this is exactly what gets you to the results and to your ideal outcome a lot faster. So remember, if you can't be found, you can't be considered. And if you can't be trusted, you can't be chosen. And if you can't scale your authority, you can't shape what's next. So make sure we change that and get you ready and excited for your next chapter.